Welcome back to the Debrief. I'm here with the Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack. Bob, let's get right into it.
Hey,
Good to have you with us.
Absolutely.
So the news story for today is that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's support for the Electoral Count Act, well, it appears to be renewing the feud between McConnell and President Trump. Who else? So what's going on here?
Well, what's going on here is the tension between Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump is here to stay. And Mitch McConnell he supports this bill, which got out of committee 14-1. Looks like it is going to pass probably in the lame duck session. And this would obviously clarify the vice president's role. So it's all tied to January 6th. So it's fascinating to see. I think there's going to be some 2024 people like Ted Cruz, who's already voted against it, and maybe others in the Senate who will vote no. But this has big bipartisan support. And
it's interesting because you see a lot of criticism of McConnell from some of the Republican candidates running in Senate races, for instance, of Blake Masters type people, J.D. Vance, on one hand criticizing McConnell, but on the other hand, still kind of reliant. They still want the fundraising efforts he's able to do for them because Donald Trump has not opened up a war chest on behalf of his supposed combatants in the McConnell feud.
That's right. And Trump wants someone else to be the top Republican in the Senate, but that's not going to happen. And those candidates know that. So McConnell's not as powerful as he used to be, but he's still pretty powerful.
Right. He knows, he's such a smart political operator. He knows he's the foil, I think, for a lot of more explicitly Trumpian kind of new right Republican political leaders. And he only picks battles when he really wants to pick battles, right?
Oh, that's absolutely right. And he does not like talking about Donald Trump, but at some point, especially if Trump runs for president, he's going to be making McConnell's life more miserable, and maybe, who knows, they'll be working together again.
Do you think there's any interest McConnell might have in eventually, how much longer is he going to continue to be the head of the Republican Party in Congress?
He's taking it one Congress at a time, so every 2 years he is going to run to be the top Republican, whether that's majority leader or minority leader, and then we'll see after that. He is getting up there, but he's certainly said, I'm going to be around for the next couple of years.
All right, well, new polling by Gallup reveals that trust in the U.S. Supreme Court is at a record low, with just 47% saying they actually trust the Supreme Court, and that's 6 points lower than the previous record low of 53% in 2015. My sort of sense of the trajectory of the Supreme Court and in terms of public opinion is that as it increasingly takes on a legislative function, because actually our Congress doesn't do as much of the legislative function as it used to. It lets the president, the executive branch, do what they're going to do, or there's so much acrimony in Congress that they're not doing anything anyway. So then the Supreme Court is settling really important political battles on abortion, on guns, on other things, and thus it becomes a more political-seeming institution.
I totally agree. Elections used to solve things or resolve things in politics, okay? And Congress would pass a bill, and then you'd move on. Elections would happen. Now, we didn't have a legal team of reporters. Now we do because, as you mentioned, everything is challenged in court. And I think the reasons for these really low numbers for the Supreme Court are because why? Conservatives are upset they didn't get rid of Obamacare. Certainly you have the abortion decision that the left doesn't like. And it's become more political. We had the Merrick Garland drama.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the ninth inning of the Trump administration.
Absolutely. So, this revered institution, not as revered anymore.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the Supreme Court really does have, for the first time, not just a conservative majority, obviously it had a Republican majority many times. There are all these examples which have stuck with true conservative voters and audiences that you had so many Republican appointed Supreme Court justices at various times, but then did not issue rules in keeping with the priorities of very Republican voters. And now you finally do have a court that is not just majority Republican, but actually majority conservative.
Right. This is, John Roberts is the Chief Justice, but this is no longer the Roberts Court.
No.
This court, as is made it up now, would have, I think, thrown out Obamacare. But obviously, John Roberts
100%.
had a huge role in that and was reportedly behind the scenes trying to change the abortion ruling. Did not have the votes. He doesn't have the votes to do exactly what he wants. So I think that's a big factor as well.
Yeah, but as far as we can tell, it's still a collegial dynamic among the court.
Yeah.
The justices on both sides allies still want it to be perceived as a kind of nonpartisan or above the political fray, and they clearly get annoyed when in the way the court is talked about. I know Associate Justice Alito has been sounding that note, but they all do. They want to be perceived in a favorable fashion, but I think there's no. In the long term, they're going to be perceived just as politically as any other branch of the government.
Absolutely. They go after each other in legal writings, but then they leave it there. Unlike Congress, where some members don't even, on the other side of the aisle, they don't even talk to one another. That's not the case at the Supreme Court.
Congress competes to, I mean, so many people in Congress view their role as almost like a talking head, right? They're doing it to appear on television, to talk on social media, to weigh in as like conservative, influential thought leaders, Democrats as well. That's what they view their role. It'd be funny if the Supreme Court, if we go far enough, the Supreme Court heads that direction too, or something like that.
Well, as we know, there are no TV cameras in the Supreme Court.
Right, but there's going to be, right?
I mean, things are changing. There's a lot of pressure on that from media organizations as well. So maybe justices will be playing to the camera at some point.
And I just read yesterday that they are going to keep the pandemic era tradition of audio for the Supreme Court. So I believe we're going to have audio for the foreseeable future, which would be interesting.
The visual could be a while.
That could be a while. All right, Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Robby.
We'll see you next week.